Hi, and welcome to the Grace Under Pressure podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Willis, and today I am joined with my guest, Alayna Lott. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? It's so nice to be here.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I tell the folks a little bit about who you are, name. Obviously, we already know that, but rank, competition style, competition track record, those kind of wonderful details.
Yeah. So, hey, my name is Alayna Lott. I've been training since I was 4 years old. So I just turned 21 yesterday. So a little over 16 years. I'm a brown belt. And I currently compete in IBJJF tournaments. I'll do some local stuff every now and then, like AGF and things like that. But for the most part, I focus on IBJJF and really focus on my ranking there. I compete all over the United States and have some international stuff coming up soon. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
That's great. I'll be honest with you. You are the first person I've talked to who has started training when they were in the single digits. So
yeah.
I gotta ask, how and why did you get started so young?
Yeah. So my dad is my coach. So when me and my siblings were younger, he started. I mean, he's been doing martial arts since he was a kid as well. But jiu-jitsu wasn't until we were all kind of around. So whenever we were kids, he opened up his own jiu-jitsu gym after he had started training for a while. And we've just been doing it since. It's kind of been a family thing. We haven't really stopped. So now we have 2 locations with multiple affiliate gyms and locations. Mm-hmm. So it's becoming more and more prevalent in our lives, even more so than it was before. But yeah, so it's a family thing and we enjoy it a lot.
So I know with me having a sister and, other people out there listening that have siblings, sometimes, when you get in a little bit of a combat sport or a combat situation, it doesn't go well, but it's brought y'all closer together, you think?
Definitely has, especially like now that we're older, we get to teach classes together and, be in the gym together and have kind of the same friend group and community. Yeah. And it's definitely something that I'm grateful for now. Now, when we were teenagers and like we were, getting out of middle school and we'd have long days and we knew that we could take it out on each other, that wasn't that fun. But now looking back at it, I'm super grateful for that.
About to say that would be it's a kind of a sanctioned sister versus sister or sister versus brother situation.
Yeah. We I said my older brother, my younger brother Braden, he is phenomenal. His game is just, it's crazy. He's so good. So I think whenever he hit about the 15, 16 mark, it was like, okay, dude, I'm not messing with you anymore. like no argument fights, no play fights. Like I'm done. You're big. I'll pass.
He for sure is. Y'all all, whenever Ben and I and the rest of our team up here come and visit, man, y'all just dog everybody. It's just, but then again, you've been doing it since you're 4. I think that's just really awesome.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah. Why did you, obviously, you get started in jiu-jitsu because of your father, which is a great reason, but why competition scene? Did you get started when you were a teenager or was that later on when you got into college?
Yeah. So basically when we were kids, me and my sister were in the first jiu-jitsu tournament in the state of Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
So whenever we were kids, obviously it was something that we wanted to do. It was never anything that was forced upon us. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely some pressure, like with your parents being like owners of some of the founding jiu-jitsu gyms in the state. And so when we were kids, it was like, it wasn't expected, but it was almost expected. Like we were going to compete, mm-hmm. We were going to win and we were going to do well. And that wasn't a family dynamic. That was just a jiu-jitsu community dynamic, I feel mm-hmm. like.
Yeah.
With the kids who started in it. So the problem with that and with the problem with jiu-jitsu being so small and as small as it was, me and Alyssa were having to fight, 13, 14-year-old boys when we were mm-hmm. 9, 10, 11.
Jeez.
And I mean, we were doing well because I mean, you know, when you don't know, when people that size don't know what they're doing, like obviously it's going to be easier to manipulate their movement and do whatever. But I mean, it's intimidating and it's scary.
Yeah.
And I remember there was this one match where I like was just sobbing my eyes out before I went into the ring. And I was like, I told Dad, I was like, I don't want to do it. He made me do it anyway. And I ended up doing like fairly well. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. And I remember I was like maybe 11 and I just told him, I was like, I'm done. Like I'm over this. And so that really kind of puts a bitter taste in your mouth on like the sport. Because like I said, jiu-jitsu is so small, but now like it's a huge thing. And so, I mean, if you talk to anybody in almost any state, they're like, oh yeah, I feel like jiu-jitsu is pretty common now, you know? So I started competing again when I was, I want to say 15. So I took a little break from competing. I was still active in the gym, but I wasn't competing. So I started competing again when I was 15. My first bigger competition back was an AGF. I was a green belt. And they put me in the blue belt women's division. So I was a teenager fighting in the blue belt women's division. And if you know anything about jiu-jitsu, like adult blue belt women are like monsters. I mean,
yes.
They're scary. And so walking into that, I was like, oh gosh, like I'm terrified. And I ended up wrist locking the girl within like 2 minutes. Woo. And I was like, man, like this is crazy. Like I've been missing out so much. And then since then, I definitely do multiple tournaments a year. I compete pretty actively with my brother and my sister. We travel, we go do not seminars, but we go and attend seminars and we like, you know, well, I guess we do seminars too. You know, it's crazy how fast like that flipped for us from like casually competing here and there to hey, let's try to get one out a month, you know, or 1 to 2 out a month.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think you highlight something that I think a lot of females have been, you know, struggle with, is that in the beginning it was such a, I don't want to say a bro fest, but it was just mainly guys doing it, and it still is a male dominated sport, that it's hard to find, you know, females in your age bracket, experience bracket, that you can go up against and feel like, okay, I stand a chance, versus, you know, at 9 years old versus, you know, or going up against a 13-year-old male, you know, which raging testosterone hormones, everything going on. I wouldn't want to fight that.
Right. And like you said, it's crazy. Like just here recently, I was looking at the IBJJF New Orleans tournaments coming up in July. And I was looking at the female brown belt division, and there are no adult female brown belts registered, like none. And it's crazy to me, because then you go over to the males bracket and it's like you have 30 adults registered in this division. And it's just, I mean, while jiu-jitsu is growing and it's crazy, we still have some growing to do in the women's department, especially in the South. I feel like it's more present. Like I feel like more women are doing it more on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But here in the South, it's so hard. I feel like just because we're a few years behind everything that's happening in California and you know, all in Nevada and like all those places. And so it's fun to see it trickling in, but it's slowly but surely happening.
Slowly but surely. And then I know you're talking about the adult division. There's, you know, a lot of, you know, younger females I've noticed, but when you get up into the masters brackets like me, there's even fewer. And so it's like, I got to find some old grandmas I got to go up against, you know.
Of course. But justice for grandma.
Yes, absolutely. You know, that jiu-jitsu grandma, man, I got to get her on the show. But man, if she can do it, I can do it. And you know, anybody can do this now.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you started competing, you know, when you were, you know, younger and having to go up against, you know, people and even, you know, people you wouldn't be matched with ideally, is that where you feel like you started developing your game, or have you just thrown that out because now you have found what really works for you?
Yeah. So a big part of my family, I feel like, jiu-jitsu journey is the different styles of jiu-jitsu that we have learned. And when you say that to people, I don't think they understand, because I mean, immediately you think of like Taekwondo and all these other forms of like martial art. You're like, well, like what form of jiu-jitsu is different than just jiu-jitsu? And honestly, it's something that you don't know unless you know what you're looking for. But we were on a team before we were on the jiu-jitsu team that was so just, they wanted to just pass your guard and stay on top the entire time, and that was it. Outside of that, it was like there was nothing. And that jiu-jitsu style is fine, or it was fine, but it's not anymore. Now lapel guards are getting more popular. You know, spiders and lassos and all these crazy things, and that smash game only works for so long. And so while that was working, it's hard to stay in like a consistent routine with that. And so now with jiu-jitsu and Matt Baker, we've really switched our entire games to being really bottom present, and playing a lot of, you know, those deep half guards, and really focusing on hip movement, and playing more of a consistent game where we really work on entangling our opponents and making them really feel uncomfortable and defeated, instead of, oh, I'm going to smash your face, and if you get up, then I don't have an answer. You know, because that's unnecessary. We can find answers. We just have to slow down and take the time to do that. And I think that's all of our games now, to be more reliant on our knowledge, instead of we're just gonna, you know, work our butts off and be the strongest person in the room, whenever that should not be jiu-jitsu. That's the whole that's the opposite of what the sport should be, right? So like I said, with the big 13 and 14-year-old boys, I mean, if someone who's not as strong or not as athletic can maneuver their way underneath them and control their hip movement and control where their arms are going next and control these things, like they can't do anything, you know. I might not be the strongest person in the room, but I'm definitely going to control your hip movement. I'm gonna dictate where you go. And I think that's super important.
Oh, for sure. It's, you can't be a one-trick pony, because if they figure out that trick, you're done.
Right.
And so I know I talked to a couple of competitors who've gone at the, you know, absolute highest level, and they say, well, I'm not really that good. I do 3 things really, really well, or I have this one technique. And I think about some UFC fighters who are really good at certain moves, like Ronda Rousey, like her armbar, if she got you in that was it. But if that's the only thing you can do, if you're very one-dimensional, I mean, it's just going to take some time. Somebody's just going to study up on it enough and then find out what the secret sauce is and try to, you know, replicate it. And so that's something I guess I love about competition, is that it shows me where, okay, you're getting to be just a one thing, you know, a one trick, and that's it. And if they shoot that down, you've got no answer. And it sounds like, from what I've heard you speaking on and just seeing you compete, is that your game has evolved as people have responded. And I feel like the lapel guards, I know I've been doing a bunch of squid guard recently because of people trying to smash me.
Right.
And so it's really interesting. It's human chess. It's that ebb and flow kind of thing. Do you have any insights or advice for people trying to find maybe an answer for that one, maybe trying to find holes in their game and trying to improve it?
I think my best advice is to like put yourself in positions against people that you know that you can kind of easily play with, if that makes sense. So like find somebody that you know that you could tap 20, 30 times in a round if you wanted to. Find that person and put yourself in the worst positions possible with that person. Don't do it intentionally. Don't be like, hey dude, like, I think you're awful. Let's, you know, like, don't do that, obviously, but like intentionally let them take your back. Intentionally let them get on mount. Like intentionally let them put you in that weird, like leg position that you're confused with. And you work out of that genuinely. Like, don't be aggressive. Don't overcommit your energy to something, but take your brain and work out of it. And that's whenever you start to get better, because then that person's becoming better on working their offense in that position, but you're also becoming better because you're working how to get out of that in a better way. And you can take it, and that's whenever questions come in. It's like, hey, because your mind starts racing. Like, well, this person's doing this in the gym and I can't get out of it. And that's probably how they're going to respond in a tournament. So like, hey coach, like what's the next step here? Or what do I do? And so that would be my best advice, is put yourself in positions that that you're uncomfortable with and you're struggling with. Don't have a big ego about it. Don't have a pride about it. If somebody passes your guard because you're playing a guard that you're not comfortable with, fine, work on it, go back. Like, you fall off the horse, get back on, right? So someone passes your guard, go back to that guard and work and see where you're messing up. And I'll be the first one to tell you, there are certain guards that I'll work my butt off on for months. And I'm like, this might not be for me, but it's just a hip movement that I haven't been doing that somebody had to point out, So don't have a big ego about it. Take advice, take constructive criticism, and work your butt off, Yeah.
I mean, that's half the game with anything, really.
Yeah.
Don't have an ego on it. And I think that's such a really good piece of advice there is, of course, yes, don't go up and say, hey, I know you suck, so let me work with you on this. But, I think that's one of those things where if you can work with somebody who you trust and, hey, can you, because I know that's something whenever I get, somebody smashing me in side control, work with somebody who's close to my weight and getting that movement. And then when I go with somebody like my husband's size, who's definitely not my weight class, well, okay, well, how does it work now if they're actually putting pressure into it?
Right.
And of course, my husband's comeback would be, you don't work with me, Sarah. We don't roll well together, which we don't. So, but I guess that's a huge benefit for you too, having your whole family in jiu-jitsu. They can probably point things out and show things with you that, you get it when they show maybe one move, or you have all that extra practice with somebody.
Yeah. That's been a super fun thing to like experience. And it's definitely humbling whenever your brother who is a lower rank than you, but you see the moments where he's working harder than you. And you see the moments that like he's putting in extra time. To have him correct you on something, it's like to an outside perspective, I think it can look almost bad. But from an inside perspective, it's like, well, this dude's been training, just as long and, probably more consistently than I have since we were kids. Like, he knows what he's talking about, And so to like he's pretty much taken over most of the classes that we teach. And so to have him say, hey, Alayna, like, move your hip this way, or like, take this grip and put it here instead. It's very, it's humbling, because it's like, okay, buddy, like, you're my little brother, come on. But it's also so like, it almost makes the game, it almost makes you have a better respect for the game and like how we do it, because that he knows his stuff. And then it makes you respect him a little bit more, because you see how hard he's working. You see how like his passion for that. And I think that carries along with like everybody in the family. Like, even my mom, who doesn't consistently train, like, you can see her passion for the gym the moment she walks in,
Oh, for sure.
And so like having that passion, having that community that you can kind of lean back on, where it's like, man, I'm in a slump, I really don't want to go today. It's like, well, come on, let's go. Like, you don't have to roll like as much as you have been, but like, push yourself, and then it ends up being one of your best days, you know? And to have somebody who understands that, especially for other people in your family who can push you to do that, it's really comforting. It's really nice to have.
Oh, for sure. And having people that share a passion, that's just so huge. Even if, it's not jujitsu, just having people who support a passion, who understand that drive, that just makes you want to keep going, because it's just reaffirming that, hey, we care about the same things, or care about the thing that you care about. If they don't share it, they at least see it and have a love and respect for what you love.
Right.
So that's huge. And that was going to be something I was going to ask, since you brought it up with teaching. I know that y'all teach a lot of classes. And so what has that transition been like, going from, at age, 4, toddlers, obviously not teaching then, but how has that improved or challenged your game now that you're teaching?
That's a great question. So whenever we were kids, and whenever we were going through these like really small tournaments, I mean, my dad, like I said, my dad was my coach. He still is. And I mean, I remember we did some intense conditioning as children. I mean, I remember there was this one time where like we had these elastic, like really long straps, and like we would put them on ourselves and someone would hold us while we did like double legs, or like we do sprints like uphill. And like, I just remember that, and like to now, and our teaching style is so different, because like I said before, it was, well, we're going to get on top of you and we're going to be the strongest ones in the room. And now it's, well, we're going to pull guard and control your hip movement. And like, if you want your hip to move, it's got to go through me first, And so like, being taught and being raised in that versus being taught, like, versus teaching now in a different like jiu-jitsu style, that's something that Braden has transitioned to really well. I struggled with it a lot. Like, I remember there were moments of like, okay, like, let's run, guys. And it's like, well, we could just grapple for 10 minutes and that could be a warm up, which is more beneficial.
Sure.
But like having that like mindset of like, oh, well, we're going to be the strongest ones when you're teaching is really hard to like implement, especially with kids now, because of the game being so different than it is. So as far as the kids' perspective of it, that's something I really struggle with, but you have to be so specific when you're teaching, especially with kids, and especially with even white belts who come in who really like, because some people come in and they get it right away, but with the people who don't necessarily like jump into it 100 miles an hour, you have to be so specific. And when you're specific and you have to be so particular about what you say and how you say it, that makes you better as somebody who competes, because like, you're like, oh, well, I'm teaching it this way, but is that how I actually do it? Or is that something I'm teaching because I've seen it done this way? And so, I mean, it can be just basic things too. I mean, it's teaching is definitely a great way when you know what you're doing. I'm not saying if you're a white belt and blue belt to like going up to a brown belt, be like, I'm going to teach you how to pull a worm guard. Like, don't do that. But like teaching people who really are unsure of what they're doing is a great way to like make sure.
Alayna,
they ask me a question, like, I have no idea,
I lost you. You said teaching is a great way, and then it went robotic and quiet.
I think teaching is a great way to like keep yourself in check and keep yourself in line. You're doing the right things in tournaments, you're teaching the right things, but you're, you know what you're doing as well,
Oh, for sure. And I think, and then also just being an actual teacher myself, I can say that that's always the hardest part for my kids when I have them do presentations, or I say, hey, you're going to teach this class on this person. Obviously, I'm not just saying, hey, I'm going to go to sleep, the class is yours, but that's always a challenge for them because, well, what all do I need to say? I said, well, here are your parameters. It's that final stage of mastery of a subject. I know the information. I can't just give you a handout and say that's sufficient. I have to be able to digest it and then give it into a way that you're going to be able to understand. If you can do that, that shows you really understand something. And
Right.
so I can imagine, like what you're saying, it makes you be honest with yourself of, do you actually do this? Is this the way that you have found this to work or not? It's kind of like whenever I've had to help teach, like when we had a women's class, teaching the young girls, I said, well, this is the standard break. What I find a lot of success with is actually in this version. So let's run this. And then that ends up being something that sticks with them. And it makes my guard break a little bit better when I'm honest about how I usually break guard, or something like that. A really basic move. It's the easiest and hardest thing you'll ever do, getting out of closed guard. So
yeah. Agreed.
yes. And so what have you noticed in terms over the past year in the competition scene, since you have your kind of pulse, at least in your division? What have you noticed as a big shift recently, maybe in this past year, maybe past 2 years?
I've noticed a lot, like in tournaments specifically, because I actually just got my brown belt a little over a year ago today. I got my Facebook notification of my memory saying,
oh, that's a
it's
nice
been
one.
a year. So I'm sorry, my dog just walked in the room.
Oh, it's fine.
So with the okay, girl, you gotta sit down. I know you're okay. Sit down. Sit.
She just wants to be a part.
She just wants to be in the interview. So if you hear like a tip tap, so sorry.
Oh, it's so good.
Anyway, competing. Yeah. So in the past year, I got my brown belt, and at purple belt, I was really like having good matches. I was really like, I wasn't winning everything by any means, but I was definitely like, they were all good fight, win or lose. Like I wasn't giving up points, but I wasn't like giving points easy. And, they were good rounds. At brown belt, like, I don't know if this is bad to say or not, but I found so many people at brown belt are like division hopping. So I end up fighting a lot of like masters, which is fine, but like that is a completely different age range, and it's completely different like style of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel like it almost doesn't like give me what I need. Like I remember I've competed in I want to say three tournaments at brown belt.
Mm-hmm.
Pans was my first at brown, then New Orleans, and then Nashville at brown belt. And Pans was great. Like I pulled guard. I had good matches at Pan. In New Orleans, and I didn't have any matches in New Orleans. No, I had one. I'm sorry. Yeah, one. But and I mean that wasn't even. I mean I swept the girl and like got on top. And then it was the same thing in New Orleans. Like they were very short. They were very one-sided. And I felt, here's the thing. Whenever you're fighting someone who's not on the same like skill level, I want to say, as like what you're doing, it's easy to just go back into that smash and pass thing.
Right.
But whenever you're actively going into a fight where the person is almost equally skilled, it's like, okay, well we can maneuver hip movement.
Yeah.
So that's what I've noticed in the past like year, especially, has been like that competition range is like slim to none. I
Yeah.
think I've had 1 or 2 matches in the past year in a tournament setting where like I've been super challenged, and I like it was one of those things where I lost both of those like by the skin of my teeth. You know,
Oh.
they were good fights. They were things that I literally told my dad after each one. Like I was happy about it. It fought well. I was like, man, if I would have had like 20 more seconds, I could have won that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what I've noticed in the competition realm of just like I'm just in a weird, I think I'm just in a weird age division and weight bracket, and like, you know, and I don't
experience too. You got to keep
yeah,
that in
and I
mind
just
too.
yeah, and like so like I said, on the West Coast, you go and like register as an adult brown belt, your division's, you know, gonna be, it's not gonna be stacked, but it's gonna, you're gonna find somebody. In the South, it's like we have some master brown belt women who are competing, but not a ton, you know, and no adult women. Right. And so it's hard, but it's nice to know that you're willing to compete, but it's also nice to, I mean, we have a tournament coming up Sunday, and it's nice to know that like I won't have to be stressed out, and I can be with my team and support them and do all that. So there's pros and cons to it, definitely, but definitely need a good match here soon.
Yeah. You got the competition itch. I understand.
Yeah.
So you said you're going to be competing internationally. Is that what you said at the beginning of the episode? Yeah.
So I actually just got a text this morning from my dad that said, start saving your money. We might be going to fight in Paris. So not anything super, super definite, but it's definitely it's definitely something that we're planning on doing. It's definitely something we want to do.
Yeah.
To go to, you know, Brazilian nationals and Europeans and, you know, all those different things that you see, but you don't really think are real until you're there, those type of things. So they'd be really good to experience.
Oh gosh, yeah, it sure would be. I mean, that's travel and jiu-jitsu and competition. Whew, sign me up. I love it.
I know, that's where I'm at too.
Yeah. Now, if you had, you know, if you liked the no-gi, I know you're a gi girl, but if you like no-gi pants is coming up, but that's not a international flight though.
Right. Yeah. I don't think I'm doing that one. So I actually just got back from working a summer camp.
Oh, so, yes.
For the past 2 months, I haven't been training at all because I've been at this summer camp.
Sure.
And I trained for the first time back Tuesday night. And it was great, but I was like, man, I want to compete so bad, but like I would die right now, you know? So like competitions are definitely on my mind, but we might have to wait a little bit.
Yeah. Get back in the groove, you know?
Yeah.
For sure. That's the thing. I mean, that really is the thing. When you step away from the mats for a little bit of time, you know, you got to, you know, knock those cobwebs off a little bit. For sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your insight into the competition scene and what it's like training, you know, with your family and then helping train others. It's a really awesome story. Not a lot of people can say that. So you're really fortunate.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversations. I'm excited to train with you again soon.
I am too, for sure. For sure. All right, and I'll see you probably actually Sunday. So I'll see you at
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm one of those poor girls that didn't have anybody in her division, so I have to just wait and go to the open. So, but yeah, it is what it is. But all right, well, thank you for your time, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.